The Software Leaders Uncensored podcast, where tech leaders grow beyond the code.
You're listening to Software Leaders Uncensored, the no-fluff podcast for tech execs who are done with buzzwords and BS. I'm Steve Taplin, CEO, serial entrepreneur, and currently writing my second book about what I've learned building 30 ventures, having 20 of those fail with 10 wins. I've taken companies all the way through going public, franchised them nationwide, raised tens of millions of dollars. The common thread in all my companies, they were all powered by one thing: custom software solutions. Now through my company, Sononify, I help tech leaders scale software engineering teams with top-tier nearshore engineers who move fast and deliver. Each episode, I sit down with real software leaders to unpack what's working, what's broken, and how to actually build what matters. So let's dive in. Today, we are very fortunate to have John Mann out of New York, CTO of Obsess. John has been an engineer, an architect, a consultant, a multiple-time CTO, and an absolute expert at transforming how organizations build and deliver digital projects. John, welcome.
Glad to be here, Steve.
I enjoyed our pre-talk, and I'm excited for this episode. John, take a minute or two and walk our listeners through the journey of your career and how you landed as CTO of Obsess.
Absolutely. So I've been coding since I was 9 years old. And then my first job was a company based out of New Orleans. And I was doing C++ coding and things like that. Then I got picked up. I did a little SQL, and then I got hired by Microsoft. I was at Microsoft for probably about 6 years, built all their sign-up processes. So if you ever signed up for Windows Live or Xbox Live, I probably worked on one of those products.
Nice.
After that, some of my friends were leaving Microsoft, and they were like, you should go check out the market right now. So I started my journey into startup land and fell in love with it, and worked probably, I would say, like 8 or 9 different startups in that time, ranging from insurance software, compliance software, library management. And then I moved to New York, and I was at an agency called Huge for a while and got exposed to so many different.
I'm going to make a really bad joke. That wasn't a Trump agency because it was huge, was it?
No, it was not.
I knew it was
No. Aaron Shapiro actually was the CEO at the time, and he was great. But I got exposed to so many cloud architectures. I did AWS, I did GCP, I did Azure, I did everything from WordPress, Drupal, Joomla, Sitecore, etc. Then I went into fintech. Did that for like almost 3 years, moved up to the CTO role there, and then fell into Obsess, where we build 3D experiences for high-end brands, and started with a team of 4, scaled that up to 12, and been in love with Obsess ever since.
And we're going to talk more about Obsess, but you've been coding since you were 9 years old? What's wrong with you?
I started on a Commodore VIC-20. And then got upgraded to a Commodore 64 and fell in love with my 64 and did almost everything you can possibly imagine with it. Like, I knew assembly code. I knew all of the different memory locations by heart. I would read program reference manuals for fun. So yeah, it was.
That's funny. Now, do you still do any hands-on coding today?
All the time. I don't think I ever will get too far away from it, just because I just love it. I love creating things. I love having those opportunities, and it's just.
And we even
like,
saw an AI
keeps going
behind you. So I don't know how you did that.
Yeah, that was actually a real one this time. But no, there's a lot. It's really with the AI, and I'm sure we'll get into the AI world, but it's really fun with coding in the AI world and being able to just scale. Just like that. It's crazy.
So you also, outside of being CTO at Obsess, you help tech startups, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Tell us briefly about that, and then I want to jump into Obsess.
Okay, sure. So I'm the founder and consultant for a company called Startups and Code. And that's the company that I started probably about 4 years ago. And a lot of fractional CTO work, some consulting of like, how do we go to market, or please review our architecture and things like that. And most of I don't do any marketing on that. This is actually probably the first advertisement at all, but I generally it's word of mouth, and people are like, oh, I know a guy, and I'm generally that guy that they know. And they're like, go talk to him. He'll solve it for you. And that's basically how that's come to be.
Now, let's, for those who are not familiar with Obsess, give us the elevator pitch on it. And I'll make the comment. I just went to the website and I was blown away with the experiences you guys create. It looks cool. Give us the elevator pitch on Obsess.
So, Obsess, we build 3D immersive experiences for really high-end brands, and now we're actually expanding into way different verticals. So what we do, it works on web and mobile, and we allow you to have that brick and mortar experience on a single device, whether you're on web, whether you're on mobile, and it's truly immersive. And we actually integrate with all of the existing products. So the clients that we talk to, because we're B2B at that point, the clients that we talk to, they don't have to do anything to change their inventory structure or any of that. We integrate directly with all of them, like Shopify, SAP, Salesforce. We'll connect to all of those, and then they'll have a virtual environment of their store. And it can start photorealistic, and then it can get really crazy.
It would be easier to show an example, but this is a podcast. How would you describe what you guys do that's different from a typical web page or store, or a typical storefront?
Right. So I'll use a regular like Shopify site. So a lot of the Shopifys or the Amazon shopping hasn't changed in decades, right? Yeah. You have a grid, you look at it, you click on things and you add it to your cart and you're done. But that experience is not the engagement that a lot of customers want. And it's not the brand awareness that a lot of the clients that we work with want. So because of that, we create these full like multiple room scenes with like different lighting and furniture. And what's really nice about doing it virtually, you're like, oh, we have a new spring line. Well, we can change your entire store very, very quickly without you having to pay for all the manufacturing costs of like doing a real brick and mortar.
Very cool stuff. Very cool stuff. How did you end up as CTO of the company?
So I was actually right before Obsess. I was building G networks for a government, for the government. And
that's a little different.
It was a little crazy. It was specifically for high altitude EMP resistant 5G networks. And it was crazy cool, to be honest with you. But Obsess found me. They were like, they had a rollout. I was like, oh, that sounds interesting. 3D experiences. So I looked into it, and the guy, Adam, was the guy who reached out to me. And Adam's like, hey, we want to talk to you. I was like, okay. And within, I would say 4 days, I was like, I'm all in. I met the team. I met the CEO. We had lunch, and she was like, you're either full of it or you know exactly what you're doing. And that's basically what happened. And I had the best time ever since.
The CTO role is often referred to as an impossible role right now. To be able to please non-technical executives, shareholders, board members, private equity firms, be able to manage the teams and everything in between. Shelf life of CTOs over the past couple of years have been like 18 months. It's a tough job, and it takes a unique person to be successful at it.
It's very challenging. Like when I started, I was actually the VP of engineering and then got promoted to CTO. And when I started, our engineering team there was only, I believe, 4 of us at the time. And that scaled up very, very quickly. And I grew that to a team of 12. Now we've built over 300 stores. I think it's actually 400 now, but I know 300 is a real number. And those experiences are still like living on for multiple years. It's kind of crazy.
There's certainly a lot of buzzwords around immersive and 3D. When I checked out your website and the projects you've been doing, I was blown away. What does Obsess do different that makes it so immersive and impactful?
There's a lot of different approaches we have in regards to the environment themselves. So 3JS and Babylon.js are some frameworks that allow you to do the 3D environments on the web. And on top of that, we actually have some really custom LOD algorithms that actually allow you to be able to load it on mobile and load it very, very quickly. One of the unique things that we have is we have graphic designers in-house that actually build like their mind, their visions are amazing. And they build these crazy environments that are not necessarily photorealistic, but really just fun for the users.
Very cool. Very cool. Tell us about your engineering team. Are you guys in person, hybrid, remote?
We were all in person until recently, and now we do still have our office, but we have moved to a remote setting. And I think that remote has actually been very beneficial for a lot of them.
Gotcha. Well, and you guys are in New York, right?
Yep, that is correct.
Commuting is not always the easiest thing. I guess it depends what part of New York, but
yeah, my commute was easy. It was one train. It was awesome.
Okay.
It was no big deal. Yeah.
So you've led engineering teams at companies like Microsoft, Huge, the other ones. How have you seen you need to change your style of leading engineering teams with Fortune 500 versus startup companies and in between?
It depends on the environment 100%. And it depends on a lot of the cross-functional teams and the way they collaborate and things like that. One of the things I've noticed is that with really large organizations, like I would say SAI Global or Microsoft, and they had so many different teams and so many different aspects of that. And it was kind of crazy at the time. But I would start off, like, I'll use SAI Global as the example. I had a team of 5 that I started, and I was a senior software engineer. Then I became an engineering manager and then VP. And then I actually left because it was too far away from the code. But what had happened was that team expanded from 5, and then I ended up getting 30. And 3 local and 2 remote. So obviously there's a lot on how to actually handle remote teams and local teams, and how do you keep that culture vibe and things like that. But at startups, in most startups that I've experienced, you need to hire the right people to actually be willing to learn. And that would be more important than what they already know, because you're going to pivot. And if you don't pivot, you're going to die. And you're going to be like, oh, we need to go a little bit here, a little bit here. So the startup people, the engineers specifically you want to hire are the ones that are craving the knowledge. They're like, you're going to get an opportunity to do it all. But right now, today, we need you to do this. And they're like, okay, I'll do that today. And then they might be doing DevOps the next day and QA the next day and C# one day and then PHP another day, depending on what kind of project you're working on. And then how things progress in our markets, right? Definitely technology is always growing, especially in AI world. It's nuts right now.
Tell us about your current tech stack and why you guys are using it.
Sure. So we're using 3JS as our primary platform for the 3D and the rendering and things like that. But on top of that, we're using React. So because and everyone's like, well, why are you using React and not Angular or like Vue and all the other ones, right? The main reason we're using React is, one, there's React Fiber, which is designed for 3JS. So that makes it so much easier to actually interface. And then from a backend standpoint, we're using MongoDB for configuration storage. But one of the unique things that Obsess does that I've never seen any other kind of like even an e-commerce site do is we don't do payment processing. Because we're B2B, all the payment processing starts on the other side. So okay. all of the legal and the bank and the compliance and all of that stuff stays on their side, and we get to actually do all the innovation and the creative and the colorful features and like gamification and all of that without having to deal with all the bank compliance rules.
So you get to basically work on the fun stuff and not have to worry about the crap. I love it.
Yeah, it's so much fun. I can't even pretend about that.
So as CTO in 2025, what's the biggest challenge you're facing right now?
The adoption of AI, obviously, is probably the big one. And when I say it's a challenge, it's because it is moving so fast. And I've been using AI for almost 2 years now. And people are like, it hasn't even been out. I was like, trust me, it's been out.
Yes, it's been talked about for 20 plus years, but
right,
it really just hit the turning point, probably 2 years ago.
Exactly. And I was on GitHub's Copilot before it was even launched. I was lucky enough to know some people that they're like, hey, you want to be on our beta? I was like, absolutely. And I'm seeing a lot of people, like when I first used it, it was not good. Like it would write bad code. It would not solve the problem. It would get in a loop if I kept on prompting it. And it was more painful to use than it was just to do it myself. And then I figured out, I was like, but let's let it grow. Let's see how it gets better. And like with Claude and ChatGPT and now Copilot and Replit and all the other tools out there, like it's gotten really good. And now you still have to
Changing quick too.
it's changing quick. And that's the big challenge of like, is it safe to use? And that's the big concern, especially when you're going into highly regulated industries like healthcare or fintech. They're like, oh, we can't use AI. You can. And you got to understand what kind of rules you want in place, where the training data is coming from and things like that. So I think getting people to understand the advantages of using AI outweighs some of the fears that they have. We're not getting to the sky. We're not doing Skynet yet, right? Terminator's not happening yet.
So as a company that works with multiple companies and different engineering teams, it's really up to the engineering leaders to set the infrastructure so the team can use AI. You don't want someone putting your code base in public ChatGPT, and because that'll come back around. Have you been able to adopt any tools and practices into your current team?
Yeah, actually, yes. And what's really nice is the way we're actually using it, and we've tried them all. We did an AI hackathon. Like we do hackathons every quarter just to play with new technologies. And one that gets all the engineers really excited. We have a full day of just writing whatever we want. And we tried Claude, we tried Replit, we did Copilot, we used Cursor. Like they were running the gamut and they were like, all right, let's see which one works the best. And then we actually did real tests. Like, all right, well, let's use a single prompt and go through that process with each one of the tools, and then we'll evaluate it as a group. So that's one of the ways we actually identified what it can do, what it can't do. And then in regards to our code base, got really careful about that. We're lucky to have this guy, his name's Jason, who is an AI ML expert. And he was like, I can actually run that entire model locally. And he will actually set up things locally. So guaranteed it's not going anywhere. We can actually still get the benefits of it. And it doesn't actually even leave our internal network.
Very good. And this is changing daily. And by the time this podcast goes out, it'll probably change again. But today we've seen it really good for testing, really good for documentation, and then some scattered other benefits that sometimes do or don't work. What have you experienced? You agree, disagree?
It's really great for documentation, period. Yep. Like it can read code bases and give you an entire summary, and then it'll actually create like Swagger files for you. And you can have full API documentation in like minutes. That was pretty amazing. The thing I think it's been the strongest for us specifically is scripting. I need a Python script to pull all these tickets, organize them, put them in another database, like ETLs. So it will write ETL data pipelines like in minutes, and it will work, and it will connect like AWS to GCP to a MongoDB. And it's like, I need these credentials. Please set it up in your securities manual, and that's it. And then it loads it from an environment variable and it'll just run. And that's been the most amazing for automation. And just for one-off scripts in Python, it's great.
So Zuckerberg came out a couple of weeks ago with a bold statement that within 5 years, he thinks he'll be able to get rid of 60% of the Meta engineering team. Now, I call bullshit on that. I personally don't see it replacing software developers. Probably in my lifetime, I see it as a great tool to help for productivity. But what's your opinion on that?
I think it will replace a lot of them. And I think,
60% in 5 years, Zuckerberg's prediction. You think it's that aggressive?
Yes, actually. So here's my big, like, it's really hard for me to say this, but it's true. I used to teach at General Assembly. I actually taught at Bellevue College. I taught database and SQL design. But what was interesting about that is the boot camps now are generating a lot of really good junior developers that are nowhere near as good as Claude. It's like, period. So the people that are, and I apologize to General Assembly. I love what you've done, but I think your time might be coming to an end, mainly because those junior engineers will not find jobs right now.
And that's a real problem right now. I agree with you. There's only a place right now for senior quality engineers. and there's not a good path for junior engineers. And it's a problem out there. And I definitely agree with you on that.
But here is the solution for that is I think the junior engineer is going to go away and the product engineer is going to rise to the occasion. And I like that term as product engineer because the product people are able to actually generate code now and prototypes and POCs for all of it. And they just have to get better at prompting. But then you have a new role that hasn't existed called a product engineer. And the product people are going to figure out their way into engineering. And then you have the senior engineers that take that code and then I would say production ready it, right? They'll clean it up, review it, secure it, and then get that to a beta and then to a production environment. But the product people can actually generate prototypes with prompt engineering today.
So it's going to evolve the roles, maybe, and certainly reduce the need for junior engineers. So what advice would you have for guys starting out, coming out of college right now, what they should focus on? Because they have to hustle, they have to become AI prompt experts. They need to do a lot to find their place.
There's a role that I've actually always wanted to push people towards who are like, what will make me better as a engineer coming out of a boot camp or whatever. And it's still true today is DevOps, right? You can be the best software engineer and people are like, oh yeah, it works great. You should see it. And they load up their local host and it works. Well, that's like, you got to take it to the rest of the step. You got to get it to production. If it's not live, it's not done. And I think learning DevOps, learning the cloud architectures, learning the tools that are existing on GCP, on Azure, and AWS, I think will be a differentiator that people will be like, oh, you can do exactly what we need, and you're a software engineer.
I think that's great advice. In the pre-show, you mentioned one of the challenges you're having as well is the scale of real-time 3D video and audio chat. Talk about that, because I think a lot of engineering teams aren't dealing with that.
WebRTC, right? So, I mean, that's pretty much the answer for a lot of it. But people are, and let's use the best example of real-time scaling. World of Warcraft, right? Everyone knows it. It has millions of users, if not billions by now. And they have real-world environments and they are actually doing real-time rendering as you go through those environments. And there's communication that's happening all real time. And I thought about that. I was like, but you don't see everybody in your environment all at once. And people don't realize there's a load balance that's actually allowing them to actually scale those environments in regards to multiple servers. And you might be on server A and your friends might be on server B, and you might not be able to ever see your friends. And then there's limits of each one of those servers. So that's one of the things about the real-time chats. But now they're doing real-time video chats, like what we're doing right now. Everyone's like, oh, well, how do I do, I don't know, something like a concert, right? How do I do a real-time concert with Taylor Swift? Let's just use her as the example, with 100,000 people in the stadium, all streaming directly to you. That's hard. I'm not even going to pretend I know how to solve that today, but that challenge is the big challenge, right? Is to be able to get that synced so everyone's actually sharing the same kind of communication, and that streaming is allowing you to actually have like a listening party or a group chat or even group video of you're all FaceTiming with each other while you're watching the concert or sports events or whatever it is. And I think that's a hard problem to solve right now. And it's not cheap. If just streaming alone isn't cheap. So that's one of the hard things to solve.
I gotta guess, John, you have an idea of how to solve it based on your background.
I do. I'm working on it. I actually have proof of concepts already working. We've scaled it, but yeah, it's not ready yet. It's not production ready, but yes, of course I always have a solution. It just takes time.
Very nice. All right, so let's switch gears here, John. What's one common myth about CTOs that needs to die? And what's one uncomfortable truth most people don't want to admit?
So the one that needs to die is CTOs will enter that role. And a lot of them were just senior managers and they jump into the CTO role and they think they're like, oh, now I'm just going to manage more people. And that is not what you do at the CTO level. There is so much more than just managing more people. at the CTO role, there's things that you have to be aware of, such as compliance, security, contract negotiation, recruiting, P&L, like the whole business side of things. And you have to know all of the tech that you're working on and the tech that you're thinking about. So you have to have not only a tactical vision, but a strategic vision. And senior managers going from that to a CTO role, they're like, oh, I don't like to do all of that other stuff. And that comes with the role.
Like, I want to go back to coding.
Yeah, exactly.
What's your view as a CTO of making sure, whether it's within your company or on the side, making sure you're always programming so you always understand trends and what your team's going through in this rapidly changing environment? What's your take on that?
I wouldn't say every, but most Saturday mornings I code. I go online and I just start playing. I've done it for, I don't know, since 98, I think. It's just kind of it was like Saturday mornings used to be my cartoon time. So now it's my coding time because I actually enjoy that actually a little bit more now. So I'll just go and I will like, oh, this is a new language, or this is a new tool, or I want to see how good this tool is. And I'll give you an example. I did a product hunt release from a Replit code that I wrote in 3 hours. So from 9 to noon, I wrote code and I did a product release by the end of that day.
That's pretty amazing.
It was a lot of fun. It was a fintech thing for financial literacy for kids. And I was like, oh, that sounds fun. Let's do it. And I did it. And it generated all of it. Yeah, it was amazing.
I've worked with a lot of CTOs of large and small companies. I have seen the best CTOs are the ones that figure out how to keep their hands on the keyboards, make sure they're doing some programming. So, and once again, and of course, things are always rapidly changing, but I feel like in the software engineering world with the advancements of AI, they're just changing faster than throughout my career. And it's hard to stay on top of everything.
No, I mean, especially now. I mean, I would say now is different than any other time I've dealt with, but it's not. Like in the late 90s when the internet was becoming a thing, it was like overwhelming, and like you had literally a term for JavaScript burnout because of all the frameworks that were coming out. And now it's like the AI world, and everyone's like, oh, you got to keep up with 10,001 AI tools. And I was like, you got to keep up with a few of them. You don't need all to know 100,000 of different tools.
I just laugh that you could be on like version 3.5 of something, and it's so incredibly different when it goes to 3.6 because it's learned more. It's better at different functions.
So you know what that brings up, right? You know that I originally worked, I used Angular 1.0, right? And then Angular 1.0 to Angular 2.0, everything in Angular 1.0 got deprecated. And I was like, all right, I'll give it another shot. And then it went from like 2.0 to like 6. And then everything in 2.0 pretty much got deprecated. And I was like, okay, I'm done with Angular. And that's when I started playing with React. I am big on React now. Absolutely. There was another question you had already asked that I want to go back to is like, what's an uncomfortable truth people don't want to admit?
Yeah.
When you when you do a startup or you're starting your startup, don't plan your exit, plan to solve your problem. And people hate that. They're like, oh, we have to scale. We need to figure out our exit strategy. No, you have to create a product that works. Let's start there.
You need revenue generating and success before you start thinking of your exit plan. Because yes,
right.
If you're not solving problems, making money, generating revenue, your mind's in the wrong place.
And so many people are like, oh, and this is how we're going to exit. I was like, what are you building? It doesn't matter. Kind of does.
Now I go back to my story of 30 ventures, 20 failures, 10 wins. If there's anyone that's experienced that more and how to make sure entrepreneurs are focused and how you learn from your mistakes, I got a lot of bruises. Sounds like
that experience alone just proves if you're like, no, I've done it. I know exactly what doesn't work and I know what does work. It's the whole like Einstein, Edison thing, right? I know 10,000 ways a light bulb doesn't work. It's great. So now let's do 10,001 and now he's got a light bulb.
Exactly.
Yeah.
John, what's one brutal lesson you wish you learned earlier as a CTO?
Politics exist in every organization. I can't even be nice about that. Yeah. I don't care how small or how big it is. There's always an ego and there's always politics of some sort. It sucks.
No, very, very good point, and I'm glad you brought that up because that's often what drives people out of roles too, is they don't like the politics. But there's going to be some level of politics in any role. So how have you navigated that?
I confront it more often than not. Is I will identify and I don't mean to be tout my whatever.
Uncensored. You can't say anything wrong.
All right. So Obsess is a unique company because the entire engineering team likes everybody. It's so weird. And I've never experienced that anywhere else. They're all like supportive and helpful. So Obsess is a unique animal. But I've seen other places that they will actually have that one engineer. And I remember this as a great example. I had this one engineer. He had been there for like 13 years. No one liked working with him, but he knew the code base. Well, when I got to the role where I got to, I fired him. And everyone was like, you can't. I was like, I can. And everyone was like, what happened is everybody just got better immediately. Everyone relaxed. They were like, oh, he's not coming to our meetings anymore. I don't have to worry about him doing my code review and yelling at me. Like all of that went away. Everyone's code got better. We moved so much faster. But everyone was so scared of getting rid of that one guy because he had so much knowledge. So I think being able to, one, never have a single bottleneck of an individual, I think is really, really important. And I think the other thing is if there is a conflict, and you'll know it really, really quickly.
I agree.
Address it. Don't be like, oh, they'll figure it out on their own. No. Talk to them and don't bring them in a room and put on gloves. Don't do that. But talk to each one individually, get their side, and then see if you can actually be that mediator to go, all right, this is the problem. Here's the other one. Like there was another time that I actually just moved somebody from team A to team B and everything got better because this person didn't like with that one person. I was like, great, we're going to separate y'all so you don't have to worry about that. And problem solved.
I like it. John, sounds like you take the uncensored part to your roles in a good way. Politics come, other things come, take it head on, bring it on the table and come up with solutions. So I love it.
Yeah, it's sometimes hard to have those HR kind of conversations with people, but when you do it and you come in, you're like, here's what I think is wrong. Am I right? What's wrong? Like, tell me. And just start with asking the questions, right? And I think that helps so much of like, don't assume that you know everything. Just ask them. You're upset. Why are you upset? And it sometimes is that simple.
I agree. John, thank you so much for getting uncensored with us today. Excited to see how you help shape the next chapter of Obsess and tech leadership at large. Any final shout outs or advice for tech leaders you'd like to give?
Shout out to Neha Singh, the CEO of Obsess. I'm a huge fan and will always be. And I think the biggest advice is plan your product to solve a problem and don't plan your exit.
I love it. Great advice, John. Thank you so much for being on the show. That's it for this episode of Software Leaders Uncensored. If this sparks something, share it, subscribe, send it to somebody in the trenches with you, and stay bold and keep building. Thank you.